What if I told you that the life you're living today is the result of a few decisions you made years ago? Think about it. The people in your life, the career you have, the opportunities you received, the mistakes you made, the victories you celebrated, the challenges you face, most of them can be traced back to one decision. The decision to say yes, the decision to say no, the decision to stay, a decision to leave, a decision to move forward, or a decision to do nothing at all. So when I look back on my life, I realize that some of the biggest blessing I enjoy today came from decisions that were uncomfortable, uncertain, and sometimes even frightening. And some of the greatest growths in my life happened when I stopped waiting for certainty and started walking by faith. Today, I'm going to share several decisions that completely changed the trajectory of my life. More importantly, I want you to think about one decision you may be avoiding right now, because the future you're praying for may be waiting on a decision you're afraid to make. Let's talk about it.
Welcome to Take Charge with Dr. Chichi.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Take Charge with Dr. Chichi. I am your host, Dr. Chichi. One thing I've learned is that life is a classroom and every day brings new lessons. I constantly learn from my life experiences, the victories, the challenges, the mistakes, the setbacks, and the breakthroughs. Many of the lessons I share on this podcast are not just things I've read in books or heard from others. No, they are lessons I've lived. That is one of the reasons I created Take Charge with Dr. Chichi. I wanted a platform where we could have honest conversation about burnout, about life, health, leadership, finances, relationships, faith, and personal growth. A place where awareness can lead to transformations. Because sometimes all it takes is one conversation, one lesson, and one perspective, just one perspective to change the trajectory of someone's life. My hope is that every episode encourages at least one person to pause, to reflect, to make a different decision, and ultimately take charge of their life. Today I want to talk about a truth that has become very clear to me. Our lives are not changed by time. Our lives are changed by decisions we make. So when I look back on my life, I realize that some of the biggest blessings, opportunities, and breakthroughs come because of one decision. A decision to move, a decision to learn, a decision to grow, a decision to lead, a decision to start, and a decision to let go. So, many people are waiting for life to change, but sometimes life is waiting for us to make a decision. So today, I want to share some of the decisions that changed my life. And my hope is that before this episode ends, you will identify just one decision that could change yours too. Let me repeat that again. At the end of this episode, I hope you will identify one decision, just one decision that could change yours. A decision that will make you take charge of your life and your purpose. Many years ago, I made a decision that will completely change the direction of my life. I left Nigeria and I moved to the United States. At the time, I didn't know exactly what the future held. I didn't have a detailed roadmap. I did not. I didn't know all the challenges I will face. No, I did not. I simply knew that if I wanted a different opportunity, I had to be willing to step into unfamiliar territory. Many people remain stuck because they want certainty before they move. But life really works that way because we cannot see to the future. Sometimes we have to take that leap of faith. So most breakthroughs come disguised as uncertainty. Most opportunities require faith before they reveal their rewards. Looking back now, I realize that had I remained where I was comfortable, many of the experiences that shaped my life would never have happened. Growth often requires leaving what is familiar. It requires stepping away from comfort. It requires trusting God even when you cannot see the entire path. One of the greatest lessons I learned is that you do not need to know every step before taking the first step. Sometimes all you need is the courage to move. Just move. And then before I came to America, I was already a nurse, a midwife in Nigeria. I'd already invested years into my education and professional development. I already had experience. I already had skills. I already had an identity. Then I arrived in a new country. Oh my goodness, that was scary. And like many immigrants, I discovered that moving forward sometimes requires rebuilding. There were new systems to learn, new expectations, new requirements, new challenges. At times, I felt like I was starting all over again. I felt like I was starting all over. I'm just thinking about it now, but it felt at some point that I had to start everything over. But over the years, I learned something important, just something important, that starting over does not mean starting from zero. You bring your experience, you bring your wisdom, you bring your resilience, you bring your character, you bring everything life has taught you, right? And the chapter may be new, but you're not. I decided that I will not allow temporary obstacles to stop me. I will continue moving forward. That decision led to decades of nursing service, leadership opportunities, advanced education, the privilege of impacting countless lives. Sometimes the challenge is not starting over. The challenge is believing that what you already have is enough to begin again. One of the best decisions, just one of the best decisions I ever made was continuing my education. Many people stop growing. They stop growing once they reach a certain level. They become comfortable. They stop learning. They stop stretching. They don't want to stretch themselves anymore. But growth requires investment. You have to invest to grow. I decided to continue learning. The journey eventually led to my master in nursing science, and later I had my doctorate degree, and the degree was valuable. But the greater reward was who I became during the process. Education taught me discipline. Of course, I had to have time management in order to be successful. Education taught me perseverance. I remember those days while I was doing my doctorate. Education taught me confidence. Education expanded my vision. Sometimes people focus on the destination and forget that growth happens during the process. You're sharpening a pencil, the process is what sharpens the pencil. The greatest investment you can make is in yourself. Nobody can take away what you learn. Nobody can take away your knowledge. Nobody can take away your growth. The question is not whether education is expensive. The question is what it costs when we stop learning. Many people believe leaders are born. I disagree. I mean, well, some people have leadership qualities, but I believe leaders are developed. They are developed. Leadership opportunities often come before you feel ready. Sometimes people see you and they see their potentials in you and they appoint you to do something. You doubt yourself. You question your abilities. You wonder if someone else will be better suited. I've served in numerous leadership positions throughout my career and professional organization, whether in healthcare, church, community organizations, and nursing associations. One lesson, just one lesson remains true. Leadership is not about titles. Leadership is about service. Leadership is about influence. Leadership is about responsibility. Leadership is about helping others become better. So every leadership opportunity I accepted stretched me. It did. So every leadership role taught me something new. Every challenge helped me grow. It helped me grow to what I am today. So if I had waited until I felt comfortably prepared, I would have missed many opportunities. Sometimes God calls us before we feel ready because He knows we will grow along the way. There comes a moment when you realize your experiences are not just for you, they're meant to help someone else. The realization led me to start Take Charge with Dr. Chichi. To be honest, starting a podcast can feel intimidating. My first episode, I talked about how it all started. At some point, I kind of wondered if people will listen. I wondered if anyone cares. I wondered if my message matters. But I decided to start anyway. And I'm glad that people will call and thank for the impact this podcast is making in their life. Because I believe awareness changes lives. I believe conversation changes life. I believe that when people learn something new, they have an opportunity to make different choices, and different choices create different outcomes. This podcast was born out of a desire to educate, to encourage, inspire, and empower people to take charge of their lives. Never underestimate what can happen when you simply begin. One of the most life-changing decisions I made was learning how money works. That's another thing. I had to teach myself. I had to read. Most people spend years learning how to earn money. That's what we all do. But just very few spend time learning how to manage, protect, and grow it. Financial literacy changed how I viewed my future. It taught me that wealth is not just about income. It is about knowledge. It's about planning. It's about protection. It's about making informed decisions. Many people work hard all their lives, but still struggle financially because nobody taught them the rules of financial gain. Learning financial literacy gave me options. It did. And the option create freedom. I had to take charge of my life. Financial freedom is not just about being rich. No, it's not. It's about having choices. It's about reducing stress. It's about creating a legacy. It's about making sure your money works as hard as you do. One of the hardest decisions I ever made was leaving a position after many years of service. I was in a job for almost 29 years. Walking away from something familiar is never easy. It's never easy, especially when you have invested years into it. There is comfort in familiarity. There's security in routine. But sometimes growth requires letting go. Growth requires letting go. I'm going to say it again. Growth requires letting go. Sometimes the next chapter cannot begin until the previous chapter closes. The decision was not easy. It wasn't. The sleepless nights, with emotional feelings that nearly drained me. The decision was not easy. It wasn't easy at all. There were questions. There was uncertainty. There was fear. Oh man, that one paralyzed me. I analyzed and was paralyzed. So I dealt with analysis paralysis. So the fear was so much, but there was also faith. Faith. And I learned something powerful. Holding on is not always strength. Sometimes strength is knowing when to let go. Sometimes strength is trusting that what lies ahead is greater than what lies behind. I also know there are people listening today. I don't know who you are, who are exhausted, who have been carrying stress for so long that it has become normal. You have been operating in survival mode for so long that you no longer remember what peace feels like. Burnout may have affected your health, your relationship, your joy, your purpose, and even your faith. Because sometimes you get so exhausted that you don't even have time to pray or fellowship with other Christians or whatever religion you believe in. You don't have time. Yet, despite the warning signs, you find it difficult to make the decision that could save your life before you break. Maybe you know you need to leave a toxic environment. Maybe you need to set boundaries. Maybe you need to ask for help. Maybe you need to rest, heal, and start all over. But fear keeps you holding on. Perhaps what I'm about to share will help you take that leap of faith so you can regain your peace and purpose. You need to take the healing shift. You need to take the healing shift. Someone shared a story with me about a family that had only one cow. I don't know where that story came from, but that person shared this story with me and it really changed my life. I'm not sure who originally wrote the story, but after reflecting on it, it changed my mindset. So this cow provided milk, cheese, butter. It was the family's source of livelihood and security. And one day, the family hosted some visitors. As the visitors were leaving, one of them pushed the family only cow into a ditch, and the cow died. The other visitor felt terrible. He could not understand why someone that came with them would do such a thing to this poor family that were so generous and share the little they have with them. Several years later, the visitors returned to see the family again. To their surprise, guess what happened? Everything has changed. They saw beautiful houses. They saw bright lights. They saw vehicles. They saw family members dressed well, looking good. The poverty they had witnessed years earlier was gone. Curiously, they asked, what happened? What happened? How did your lives change so dramatically? The man replied, someone pushed our cow into the ditch and it died. That cow was our only source of livelihood. After it died, we had no choice but to look for other opportunities. We discovered abilities we never knew we had. We built new business. We created streams of income. Today we are wealthy and stress-free. Now let me ask you a question. What is your cow? What is your cow? What is that thing you are holding on to? You're holding on to that. that may be preventing you from blossoming? I'll ask again. What is that thing you're holding on to that may be preventing you from blossoming? What is that thing keeping you from tapping into your God-given potentials? What is that cow in your life? Let me be clear. I just want to be clear. I'm not advocating that anyone push a real cow into a ditch. No, that's not what I'm advocating. But based on the lesson from this story, what are you holding on so tight that is holding you back from becoming who God created you to be? Could it be fear? Could it be comfort? Could it be a job, a habit, a mindset, a relationship, or an identity that no longer serves your purpose? Sometimes the very thing you depend on is the thing limiting your growth. Sometimes what feels safe is actually keeping us stuck. And sometimes the decision that feels most frightening becomes the decision that sets us free. It is time to take charge of your life. It is time to make the hidden shift. It is time to trust God, step forward in faith, and embrace the possibilities of waiting on the other side of your decision. When I look back on my life, I see common thread. None of this decision came with guarantees. No, none of it came with guarantees. None came with certainty. None came with a complete roadmap. They required courage. They required faith. They required action. And that is how life works. The future is built one decision at a time. So it's time for reflection. I always like to have this session, the reflection prompt. And I want you to ask yourself this honest question. What decision have I been postponing? What opportunity keeps showing up in my life? What fear is holding me back? What would I attempt if I knew I could not fail? What one decision could change the next 5 years of your life or of my life? I'm going to ask myself that too. What is your cow? Or you can ask yourself, I'm going to ask myself, what is my cow? What am I holding onto that may be preventing my healing, growth, peace, or purpose? Just write it down. Write it down and pray about it. Pray about it, then take action. Many people believe wealth is created by one big opportunity. No, it's not. The truth is that wealth is usually created by a series of wise decisions made consistently over time. The future you desire may be one financial decision away, one decision to save, one decision to invest, one decision to protect your family, one decision to learn, one decision to plan. The future is not built overnight. It is built one decision at a time. So if this episode encouraged you, please like, subscribe, share, and leave a comment. Tell me what decision changed your life. What decision changed your life? Or what decision do you know you need to make? The story may inspire someone else. But I want you to remember that your future is not determined by your circumstances. Your future is determined by your decision. You do not need to have all the answers. You don't. You just have to take that bold step. Take that bold step. Your future is determined by your decisions. You do not need to have all the answers. You don't. You do not need to see the entire path. No. You simply need enough courage to take the next step. Let me just do it again. I say this because I want us to feel it. Your future is determined by your decisions. You do not need to have all the answers. You do not need to see the entire path. You simply need enough courage to take the next step. One decision can change your life. One decision can change your family. One decision can change your future. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Take Charge with Dr. Chichi. I am Dr. Chichi. My mission is to help you heal, lead, prosper, and take charge of your life, your health, your finances, your purpose. Until next time, protect your peace. Guard your purpose. Keep growing. Keep learning. Keep moving forward. And remember, the future you are praying for may be waiting on your decision that you're afraid to make. So take that leap of faith. Take charge of your life. Thanks for watching once again this episode of Take Charge with Dr. Chichi. Have a blessed week and bye-bye.
Take Charge with Dr. Chichi is a brand of Sparkling Star Development Strategies LLC. The information provided is for educational purposes only and does not constitute financial, legal, or medical advice. Financial services are offered independently by Dr. Chichi in accordance with applicable licensing and regulatory standards. Thank you for watching.